Welcome to Climate Papa. This is a show about climate change, technology, and parenthood. And today, you're going to hear from my Papa Ben and my Uncle Arthur.
Hi there, and welcome to Climate Papa. I'm Ben Idelson. I'm based in Seattle, and I invest in product-led climate companies. And I'm a papa to two kids, a 5-year-old girl and a 2-year-old boy. And today, I'm joined with my chief co-conspirator, Arthur.
Hi, everyone. I'm Arthur Schwab. I live down the block from Ben. Ben is my brother-in-law and my bestie for many years. We have 2 kids as well, my wife and I, 2 girls. 7.5 and 5.5. And I spend most of my time building product.
It's very important not to forget the half years. They'll get very upset
Yes.
if you miss that. Today was one of those days where my favorite Apple Watch feature came up, where the decibel alert. I was putting a 2-year-old down for a nap, and the Apple Watch says the volume is at an unhealthy level, like I'm at a concert rave, because it exceeded 90 decibels. The funniest thing about this is I think about like how much research we did about what headphones to get the kids to protect their ears when they watch a video on a flight. Meanwhile, he's screaming at 98 decibels in my ear just to go down for a 1 p.m. afternoon nap.
Well, now find yourself in the peaceful downstairs of our house here, which has recently become the Barbie headquarters for our daughters. And I've resisted these Barbies for a long time. And now I find it really amazing. They're so they're unstructured toys. So their imagination just like flourishes because there's endless games to be had with these dolls and all of their like little accessories.
I see like a whole classroom Barbie set going on right now.
Yeah, there's also a camper van somewhere here that has turned into a mobile health van at some point because their mom runs a mobile health van.
Is there a climate activist Barbie yet?
You know what? Once they listen to some podcasts of ours, maybe we'll start to see some Barbie climate change.
That's a good transition. What is this podcast about?
We've been exploring, we've been learning about what our potential role can be in tackling climate change and like what our impact can be on an individual level, where we expend our energy.
So why is it not just like climate change podcast, Ben and Arthur?
Yeah.
Why is it Climate Papa? And why Papa?
Yeah. It's hard to untangle the identities. Or actually, let me rephrase that. I think our identities are, my identity, I think yours as well, so intertwined with being a parent and a partner and a member of society. And then what we do professionally, I think historically people have really tried to like bifurcate and separate that out. And more so, I think it bleeds into our holistic identity. And maybe it has to do with working from home so much and working on something when my daughter runs in from school and gives me a cuddle and then asks me what I'm working on. But those lines get blurred for better or for worse. And so when we think about our role in the climate stuff and our role as product people and our role as parents and partners, feel like it all gets blended together.
Well, and I think about, I don't know, at the simplest level, I say this to our kids, like sometimes when they're not being safe with their bodies, I say like, what's my number one job? And it's to help keep their bodies safe. And like, I think about not on the urgent sense of you're going to hurt yourself this hour, or you're going to hurt yourself tomorrow or this week, but like we're on track for them to not live in the safest place they could, or their kids not live in the safest place that they could. And I think that if I'm able to do something about that, whether it's with my time, energy, resources, podcast, mic, then that's my number one job as a papa too, right? Not just in the kind of, oh, can work tap into this, but it's like I start to feel like I'm failing them if I don't think about their world, not even that long from now, just the summers now, we're starting to have those impacts, and it's affecting our health to breathe in smoky fires. And I think about whether or not they should play outside, and it's sad. And that's the kind of fear side, but just on the upside of what examples do we want to give them around if we have the privilege of choice in what we work on, and we have the privilege of being able to work on something with a longer time horizon, then how could I not choose for it to be the thing that feels like it will set the course of their life over the next decade in a big environment sense of what's going to be happening in the world around them.
Yeah, I think also...
Sorry, was this supposed to be a lighthearted conversation?
We can go back to Barbies. I think one of the immediate thoughts that hit me when we talk about this and the big picture problem or problems that we're quote unquote working on is I'm not under the impression that I'm going to like single-handedly have this like major impact on the world. Wonderful if I did, but I don't have that mentality. I don't think that if I don't learn anything about climate and don't spend any time working on things that have impact on climate, that will change the course of history one way or the other. That said, I think there's like a level of being part of the solution and being an aware member of society, and we take pride in exposing our kids to ideas, social issues all the time, interpersonal issues, right? And not shielding them from things that are happening in the world, making things accessible to them at their appropriate sort of age. And this just feels like one of those huge things that is no longer in like a bucket of its own, right? Oh, there's climate, and then there's this, and there's that. It spans all of the issues in all parts of our life. It touches on all these things. It's like this foundational layer. And so to ignore it or to just feels not really being part of, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, not the approach you want to take with your kids and
for myself.
And
I
for yourself,
think, yeah. I don't know how much of this I'm always like connecting back to like them doing this for them. I think I'm doing it for myself as well. I think there's a good feeling to be like engaged in something that is meaningful, is timely, and interesting, right? So if I'm like very honest, I think the reason I'm going to like the climate meetups and learning about the different startups and doing interesting things and talking to founders and helping them on their pitch decks, I think the reason I'm doing that a lot of times is because it's energizing, it's interesting, and I see this growing ecosystem and I want to be part of it. And it's like that and not eating meat. Like, it's just, these are things that like, that you can do that are actually surprisingly not that hard to break into.
There's so many complex systems and pieces that input into climate. And I think because, we'll talk more about this, I think because it touches so many different parts of our life, you can choose any piece of the way the world works and go deep and learn a lot and connect with people and learn, everything from timber to cement to steel to how we build things to how the utilities work to like it all these things it reminds me a lot of our time at Stripe. Like, working on infrastructure from the outside sometimes appears boring, but when you get into the details is quite interesting, and you start to appreciate that the world we live in as modern humans, especially those of us that live in cities and work in like knowledge working industries, is built on all of this infrastructure that is human designed and made and concrete and these are all choices that we made, and we get to make new ones each day. And over the next coming decades, we're going to need to drastically shift many of those choices and build new layers of infrastructure. And I think that's an exciting thing to understand that level of transitions going on. I do want to return to one thing, which is where the name Climate Papa came from and the genesis of that. I think it was a couple months back, I saw on Twitter, someone tweeted a new type of dad just dropped, a climate dad. And I think they're hitting off of, there's a latte dad, I think that was infamous in maybe Denmark or Norway. And then there was girl dad, the proud father of girls, of which I believe you are one. I I think they're referencing that and said there's a new type of dad, a climate dad. And I think it was a funny meme joke. And I spun up a little Twitter account and bought the domain Climate Papa, thinking like this could be a funny place to make corny dad jokes about climate. I don't know, what other corny things we can say about heat pumps and solar and how there's dads now staring at batteries instead of the engine of a car. And then a couple days of sitting with it and, I don't know, talking to you and others about it, I was like, wait, no, my kids call me Papa and I'm spending all my time thinking about climate. Like, the fact I'm a climate papa is not a joke. It's actually like quite serious. I don't want to take myself seriously, but as a part of my identity, like that is encompassing of both all the intellectual work and kind of energy I want to put into things. And yes, I will happily make fun of myself with imagery or laugh at ourselves about some of the topics we'll get into. But I think it's a fun and interesting movement to think about and think about how motivating it is for many people, not just fathers, but also mothers and also uncles and aunts and grandparents and anyone not even involved with the child, just to think about the future. And I think that it's that partial orientation and combination of these interesting systems and these interesting problems and the next generation as this like swirl for me of just deep, deep motivation. And so, yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. So what is going to happen on this show? This is fun. I think we could just talk like this for hours, and we probably will, and many episodes might be that. But it'd be fun to explore, maybe brainstorm live right now, the types of conversations we might have together with other people, sorts of topics people might expect. I think one category will be interviewing others who might be working in climate or interested in working on climate, who are taking a similar kind of holistic motivation to it.
Maybe one question to pose is, what impact do you want to have with your listeners? What problem are we solving for?
Who is this product for?
Who is this product for? And what do you want this to motivate folks to do other than listen to episode 2, 3, 4? And is this to unblock folks who are starting to see interest in getting more involved in their professional life in something that's climate related? Is it a place to process the intersection of parenthood and our professional lives and this challenge that I think a lot of us often face, which is working on something that we find important and also working on something that supports our families and working on something that gives us the right work-life balance? And can you have all three? And what are the trade-offs and how you navigate that? And those aren't necessarily climate unique to working on climate.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I've spent so much of my career and before career with a goal in mind for what I was doing, right? Whether it was academic goals or career goals or financial goals. I don't have a goal for this. And I think I'm trying to remind myself of that every time I get into it. I think my goal for this is to return back to my goal is to have this conversation right now, inspired by
Rick Rubin.
Inspired by our friend Rick Rubin. And by friend, we were both listening to his beautiful The Creative Act book.
I wish he was my friend.
Yeah, maybe one day. That's my goal, is to have this conversation.
That's beautiful. I
love conversations. I think it's where I work through things, and it's where I connect. And I want to do that more with you, more with other people like us, and more with anyone who wants to engage on this in this way. And then I think from there, we'll see what happens. And the rough sense I get, having kind of floated this idea to a few people, is that people are hungry for something between kind of the climate activism space and the climate tech space, where climate tech is super interesting intellectually and analytically, but I don't think is bringing in the layer of the emotional with people. To be fair, I haven't surveyed the market here. I've said, I want to have these conversations and I want to record them and I want to talk to people about this stuff, and we'll see what happens.
I love that. And thanks for bringing me back to that. It's reminding me of the feeling I get when throwing pottery. So I started throwing pottery about a year ago, 2 years ago. And it's this one place where I do the act of creating for the sake of that act of creating. And my mind definitely wanders to the outcome, and I try to bring it back. And I've never gone down deep in meditation, but I think I get the sense that this is in that realm. As I'm throwing and working on something, I start to imagine what it'll turn out like. And I start to imagine what I'll do with it and all the
fame and glory.
The fame and glory that it will bring me, right? That vessel of sort, a bowl, tumbler, will bring me, and then it'll just get messed up, or it'll just
the second you lose presence with it.
That's exactly. And then from that moment, it's what do I do with that feeling? And it's been a good place to practice and there's so many stages that it goes through. It's been a good place to practice being okay with it maybe getting unusable or ruined at the very last stage that went through like multiple weeks. And that's just for the sake of doing it. And
yeah,
I like bringing that to other
realms. To that point, I want to make sure that this is recording.
Oh, that's
because that
for the sake of doing it, that'd be perfect.
That'd be the sake of experience. So let me pause and see. And to return back to some of the things that you can expect on the show, I think conversations like this with other climate papas and concerned parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles, I also think it'd be fun to explore some of the topics that are traditionally associated with dads. I queried around and thought about some of those things. I think one great one, summertime, it's time where we're grilling on our deck. And nothing quite hits me going to the store, buying burger meat, and throwing it on a propane grill to be like, yeah, I feel like I'm doing the right thing here. And so I think that'd be like fun to unpack and fun to explore. Are there alternatives? And what is it like? Are there electric grills? And what is the latest in burger alternatives? And how do we think about this from like a climate perspective and a food health perspective? Because I also care about what my kids are eating. I think that'd be a fun one. Do you have things like that?
I think that's great. We can talk about buying an EV and how you navigate that, exploring the home upgrades and how are you figuring that out. And I think also, what are we reading and listening to? It's what's going into our brains, what are all the inputs.
In addition to EVs, I want to nerd out on e-bikes like quite a bit. I think that's like
very happy to talk about e-bikes and cargo bikes.
And I think like part of the intersection of parenting is all the stuff that we all buy, but like think about, I don't know, how problematic are diapers from a climate perspective, or all the baby food and all the toys, and like how to think about circular economies in this perspective when you have kids that grow through all the shoes and all the clothes and all the Amazon packages.
Yeah. I think one of the things I want to make sure to, sounds like you need to go pick up one of your children.
I do, in 10 minutes from school. So
great. I think one of the things that I want to make sure is I have no intention of driving guilt to the listener, nor
I do.
Oh, yeah, that's where you and I are different. Or 1-2 punch, or to boast that I'm doing all the things. On the contrary, in fact, I was talking to someone, I was telling them about we're building this fund to invest in climate startups, and oh, I didn't know you care so much about climate, Arthur. All right, tell me, what are you doing about climate? And I thought it was a really interesting question, and it struck me that the answer was not enough, and that's a motivation for all the things we're doing. It's hard. And it should be easier for the consumer. It should be easier to do all the things. And so it's not that I've done them. To the contrary, if I've done them, maybe that's already the problem is solved.
Nothing like accountability than making a podcast, putting it out in the public and having people judge us for it. So maybe it's not, I should be clear. This isn't about guilting others. It's about self-guilt.
That's right.
And the last couple minutes, I think let's highlight some of the things that we're reading about, whether that's climate related or more broadly. Or learning about. It doesn't have to be reading, listening to, enjoying, watching.
Yeah. You want to start us off?
Sure. I thought it was timely. Amazon has a walkout today, I believe. It's our local grocery store outlet. And a lot of it's actually motivated from employees not happy with the businesses, with Amazon's kind of reversal of climate change goals. They shifted a lot of their targets from 2030 to 2040. And I was just thinking about this. I feel for them. Their business is predicated on getting you stuff quickly. And that's inherently a carbon intensive process. And they're making all these investments that they can. I think one missed opportunity, or one thing I'd love to see them do going forward, is be more transparent about the shift, because, 2030 is this target a lot of us have. It's only 6 years away. So or 6.5 years away if the half years are important. And I think it could be a good learning exercise to say, hey, we couldn't hit these targets in 6.5 years. Here's what it looks like. Let's share the 10-page version of this. Instead, I think they just updated their website, and that was pretty disappointing to a lot of folks.
I'm reading a book, a novel. I love reading novels. It's called The Wind-Up Girl, and it takes place in the future, mostly in Thailand. And it's the world when fossil fuels have been depleted and there's not enough other energy. And there's a lot of there's a food shortage, and there's a lot of agricultural modification and gene modification. And I'm early in the book, but I'm really appreciating the world that it's painting. It feels really real so far. For those who've read the whole book, maybe I haven't gotten to those other parts, but really tackling what sort of aggregation of corporate power around food and energy will look like around the globe.
Super interesting. The last thing that I think we already mentioned, but just want to highlight, is The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. I think it's like just one of the most meditative books to slowly listen to. It's one of the only things I listen to on 1X because I just enjoy slowing down, and also deeply inspiring for any creative thing anyone is doing. And while he's speaking from mostly a music creation background, I think it applies to so much. And it's been motivating for me because it examines all of the self-doubt, all of the hesitations, all the ways that you deal with choices, all the ways that you deal with the hesitation to put something out there. And it's an inspiration for this whole process.
Yes. And he was on Ezra Klein a while back talking about his book. And one of the things, in addition to the book, which is, I agree, fantastic and is my nightly meditation. But one of the things that he said on that podcast was that they were actually re-recording. And he said something along the lines of, what I'm doing right now is the most important thing for me right now. And I will be here as long as it takes for it to be done. And that's an amazing mindset. I haven't achieved that ever. Always thinking about 5 other things, always have a time cap, but it's an aspirational goal to be so present that this conversation right now is the most important thing of this moment right now.
It is, except I just checked my watch and my daughter's about to be let out of school. So it's now becoming the second most important thing, which I better go do that.
I think picking up my niece from school is more important than this conversation.
I think that Rick Rubin might not have a 5-year-old in school when he said that. And on that note, please give us feedback. Send a note to ben@climatepapa.com and subscribe, follow, whatever the thing is. Do it if you like this, and know of folks who might be interested, send them a text. And until next time. Just want to add a special thanks to Ben Gilbert from the Acquired podcast. He's been both an inspiration and a mentor as we get this off the ground. At Stripe, we always love this quote from Picasso. When art critics get together, they talk about form, structure, and meaning. And when artists get together, they talk about where you can buy cheap turpentine. Well, thanks to Ben for talking about podcast turpentine with me, from microphones and gear to the best editing software. And our intro music is from one of our favorite artists, Balkan Bump. Let's let him take you out.
On we go like